all that? That's skin from my bum. Kiss my ass. Hey folks, it's Finn. In today's vlog, I want to revisit a vlog I made a couple of weeks ago where I spoke about my arm graft, and I did a reflection on my choice to use my forearm as the donor site for my phalloplasty, having had my surgery in 2015 and it now being 2019, reflecting on the choices I made and if I'd make the same choice again. Lots of people commented on that, asking questions about the use of my hand, my fine motor skills, my strength, whether the scar outs me, what I tell people about it, loads of questions around that. So today I wanted to revisit that vlog and answer those questions. So let's get into that. I had loads of questions from musicians. Rourke, I think that's how I say your name, Rook, apologies, and Adam have asked about fine motor skills and weakness. Now, to just reflect back on when I first had my phalloplasty, I remember like the first few weeks being really quite scared about having my arm ever work again normally. I knew it was going to take time, but it was really difficult to straighten my arm. My hand was really weak, the wrist was really difficult to bend, I had some numbness in my thumb and in my fingers, my hand was swelling all the time, and although I knew that was part of it, and that most people now recover fully, of course those worries were there, but I just did what I was told. I rested it, I didn't use it too much, I elevated it and all of that, and patiently did all the exercises they gave me to strengthen it, to put it out straight and to strengthen the hand. And by the end of the year, actually, everything was pretty much back down to normal. I did notice that I had lost some fine motor skills. People laughed at the time when I compared my ability to undo yogurt pots, something I'd not really thought about before, but I was suddenly aware that that fine motor of pulling the plastic thing off a yogurt pot wasn't actually possible for me, and I didn't know whether that was going to come back or whether perhaps I've not even noticed it in the first place. I don't know, but I could definitely see at the end of the year a definite difference in my fine motor skills on my graft arm than on this arm. However, here we are almost 4 years later, and I can honestly say that it's no different either hand now. I do have to say I'm somebody that's got very weak hands anyway. I've always had very weak hands, very weak grip, very weak wrists that make a lot of noise when I do that. That's always been the case for me. But I can say that there's no difference between the two hands. This one is not markedly different than that one. The only thing I do say I still have problems with is press-ups. I always have because of my weak wrists, but I do find it quite uncomfortable on this wrist to do press-ups. I don't know whether that's because of where the skin kind of is there, and then when I do that it kind of presses in to the little indentation of the scar. I'm not sure, but that is the only thing that remains, but it doesn't get in the way of me doing push-ups. I'm just aware of it. So, fine motor skills, exactly the same. Weakness, definitely no more weakness in this than the other, and my use of fingers is just the same both hands. I do think it depends on the exercises you do. For example, I just did generic exercises. I'm not a musician, I don't drive, I'm not hugely into fitness, so I don't do lots of push-ups or use my arms to push up barbells or anything like that. And I think how you use your arm in your recovery is going to then affect those little areas. Do I make sense? So because you're a musician, once your arm starts to heal, say you play piano, you're going to start doing this with your fingers again. I have a friend who is a musician and we were talking about this. Your muscles will strengthen depending on how you use them. If I was somebody that drove, my grip would probably improve. Does this make sense? So I think I can understand the worries, but I think if you're a musician, if you're into fitness, if all of these things are what concerns you, I think as soon as you start to do the exercises and you start to gradually use your arm, then you gradually start to do your normal routine of making music, whatever you do, and in doing so you'll re-strengthen those abilities. So you might find initially that your finger movement isn't great, but over time, especially concentrating on those exercises, it should return to normal. Did that make sense? A couple of people also asked me if I would explain the sensation on the skin. Does it feel like air? It's a strange thing. I can feel tapping, but I think that's because I can actually feel it in the hand I'm tapping with more than anything. But touch, very, very little. Towards the edges of my scar, I can feel more, but on the whole, this is very, very numb. At times it can feel quite cold. If somebody holds my arm, it can feel quite peculiar. It is a loss. I talk about this all the time. You know, it's something we have to come to terms with. We lose certain parts of ourselves. I'll never ever feel someone's touch on this part of my arm ever again. But it doesn't get in the way of my life. I have cut it a couple of times. That's something you do have to watch. I've burnt it on the oven and I've cut it because obviously you do not get the signal from your skin that you've hurt it because it's numb. So I've scraped it against something and not realised till I've got home that it's bleeding, and I've put something in the oven and touched the edge of the oven, not even realised, and then noticed I've burnt my arm, you know. So you do have to be careful of those things. At 4 years, I don't think anything else now is going to come back from this. I really can't see I get much more sensation. But it isn't a problem for me. It's fine. I've had some questions about scar treatment as well from Jay and a couple of other people. And I have made another video which I'll link to, which talks about top surgery and the medications, scar creams I use. I will make one especially about this, I think, because it does obviously differ because this is such a bigger area. I use Tamanu oil. I love the stuff. There is always this thing that it's hard to prove if certain oils make a difference or not. But what I know is it made a difference to me. It's a really, really lovely thick oil. And what I found was I used to just massage all of my scar with it just to keep that nice and moist, because the graft is best kept, any scar is best kept moist. That's how it heals really well. But what I did find, because it's such a big area, compared to my chest, when I would use Tamanu oil on there, this would often still get dry. So what I would often do is use something really deep cream, like a E45 we have in the UK. If you have something similar, I'll try and find a link to something below. It's a cream for like eczema and really seriously dry skin. So I used to use that first, rub all of that in, and then massage on top with the Tamanu oil. I also use Coat. I've used that for all my scars. It's expensive. You only need a little bit of it, but still, you don't want that over your whole scar. It would cost you a fortune. So what I did was I used the Coat just for the edges and for little areas where you can see that the scar didn't quite take. I used a bit of Coat on those, so just on the edges and just on those, just to help these scars heal a bit. That's very brief, I know. I will make a proper update video about scar healing on the arm graft. Really interesting question from Ophelia, I think I say your name like that, and Michael, about whether this outs me and what I say about it now. One of the things about trans people being more in the media, about more trans people sharing their transition journeys, their surgeries, is more and more people recognise these kind of scars. So there is a concern that it could out me. Nobody has ever walked up to me and said, "Oh, I recognise that scar, that's your penis." Not quite sure how I'd react to that if they did. Luckily, most people have some common sense. I will say though, because I've thought about this a lot, and the sort of people who are going to recognise top surgery scars or phalloplasty scars are those who either know transgender people or watch these kind of things because they care about transgender people. People that aren't interested in our lives likely are not going to be watching them. So that gives me some reassurance that if people are recognising them, hopefully they're people that are on our side. As for what I say, if people do ask, a couple of times that has happened. Once I made a joke and just said I had a very dangerous gerbil, and another time I just said I'd been in an accident and had something repaired. I also said to someone else once that I needed something internally repaired that they needed an arm graft for. Luckily that's been enough for people. If people did press it, I would evaluate the situation as I do when I talk about myself being trans. Sometimes I feel it's right to come out and explain. Sometimes I'll kind of dodge the subject or deflect from it. I always play it by ear. Because I'm somebody that does this, you know, I talk on YouTube, I share my journey. I do like to use opportunities to educate if I can. And I got to admit, I do quite like the shock factor of turning around and saying, "That's my penis." Well, actually, that's my bum. Gotta love a bit of shock factor. It's half the fun of being trans, right? So does it out me? I don't know. Quite possibly it does. Quite possibly people are just curious as to why I've got this massive scar. But as I say, when they've asked me a question and I've just kind of deflected it, they've not pushed the issue, and that's been okay. As I said, I am going to get this tattooed, not because I'm worried about it. Lots of people left really lovely comments about how good this scar is. I do realise that this is an amazing scar. People have given me some really good advice actually about different things you can do over tattooing. Micropigmentation was something that someone mentioned, and someone else mentioned another kind of dot tattoo or something. These are great things, but for me, I've always wanted a tattoo on there. It's always been the plan. And I always wanted, let me just leak what's happening with my tattoo. I want a phoenix, always wanted a phoenix. And now that Mum's passed away, a phoenix seems very apt. A phoenix seems to come up in my life a lot. I lived at Phoenix Court, I lived opposite Reborn House. It just feels poignant. So it's not really for me to cover this, it's more to honour this. That's the reason I'm having the tattoo. But thank you so much for that information. It's really nice to know that there are other options, and for people reading the comments below to know that there are other options to cover scars. And that's why we make a great team. Which reminds me, somebody asked a question about how long you should wait to have an arm graft tattoo, any graft tattooed really. The jury's out on that one. Some say a year, some say a few. I think it all really depends on how healed you are. In my first couple of years, my arm did some strange things around its pigmentation. Even though I was wearing like a sleeve on my arm a lot of the time, this got really dark, and sometimes a graft can do that. Sometimes in healing, a graft produces too much melanin, I can never say this word, and gets dark, and that's what was happening. And so I thought I wanted to leave it a little bit longer and just let it settle down. It stayed like this and this colour now for a couple of years. I'm coming up 4 years, so I think that's a good time. So basically, it's about finding a tattooist that is happy to tattoo it. And I am going to share that journey with you when it happens in August, which I'm so excited about. But basically, it all depends on your own healing. Never before a year. I would say a couple of years, and then you can look at having it tattooed with an artist who knows what they're doing. I really hope that helps. If I have forgotten anything else you want to know, please do always leave me a comment. I'm always happy to answer anything you want to know within reason. Next week, I'm going to address this topic of sensation. It's going to be one of them videos that's going to be tough to do, but I know it's really, really welcomed by people. So I'm going to be talking very openly about the way things feel there, how things work there, and so on. So if you have any questions about sensation or anything else, of course, pop them in the comments below and I will answer that next week. I know there was a few comments this time on last week's video about sensation. I will answer those as well. I will leave that there. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, I'd love it if you would let me know, and you can do that by leaving me lovely comments as you always do, by liking this video and subscribing to my channel. I know people follow me for different reasons on here, and I have different playlists, which hopefully means that everyone gets everything they need. Travel playlists, transgender playlists, LGBT playlists, Glastonbury playlists, the list is endless, so hopefully you will always find something here that you enjoy in each Finstallment. See you soon, folks.